As we move into November, Florida's weather finally starts to settle. Temperatures drop into that comfortable range for both plants and gardeners. The days get shorter and the pest pressure eases up. It's the perfect time to harvest those warm season crops and plant those leafy greens. In this video, we'll go over exactly what to plant for North, Central, and South Florida so that your garden stays productive all through the winter. Let's jump right into salad greens. So when I say salad greens, I'm talking about lettuce, endive, kale, arugula, and spinach. Back in September, I planted this endive in my garden tower because endive is one of the greens that prefers a little bit warmer weather. Endive and lettuces don't typically love temperatures below 50 degrees, which is why I would tell North Floridians to be cautious about those two specifically, endive and lettuce. You'll have another chance to sow them in the early spring when the temperatures break, but for now in North Florida, I would recommend going for spinach or even kale. Those of us in Central and South Florida can plant any of these salad greens in the current month or even all the way through about February. So you have time to start them from seed if you'd like, in seed starting cells or trays, or even try direct sowing if you'd like. I prefer to start mine in seed starting cells, except in the case of a garden tower. I actually find it pretty difficult to transplant starts into the garden tower, so I would prefer to direct sow them in here. If you're looking to harvest some homegrown greens for a Thanksgiving salad but you haven't started any yet, I would recommend just running to the store and picking up some starts for those. November is the perfect time of year for everyone in Florida to be transplanting their collards, mustards, and Swiss chard into the garden. Collards are one of my favorite greens to grow for a number of reasons. They are so beautiful and a real showstopper in the garden, and they also just taste incredible if you know how to cook them. I do feel the need to let you know how much space a collard green plant will take up in your garden. This is a broccoli right here. It's approximately the same size as a collard green with these huge leaves that come out like this. And I mean, it's really going to take up almost like this whole like 2-foot section of your garden. But in my opinion, it's worth it because there's no wasted space on that crop. You'll be harvesting those leaves. You can store them in the freezer if you'd like, or you can cook them as you grow them. One of the real advantages of planting both salad greens and cooking greens in the month of November is that our temperatures across the whole state of Florida are starting to drop, and they're going even lower in December, and then they'll start coming back up in about February or March. So we have quite a bit of time for these greens to grow in cool weather. And cool weather is going to make those greens sweeter and more tender. As the temperature drops, so does the pest pressure, which is great because we want to consume those leafy greens with the comfort of knowing that they haven't been sprayed with organic or non-organic pesticides in our home garden. We want to just be happy with how we grew it. And there's a pretty good chance you don't even have to spray it and you'll have perfect looking greens. If you've been looking for a reference guide that tells you when to plant what crop in Florida and tells you whether to direct sow or transplant it and tells you the variety that you should plant, take a look at my planting guide that I created. There's one for North Florida, Central Florida, and South Florida. If we flip over to November, you'll see what to plant in the garden now, and this is a full list of vegetables that you can plant right now, and it's going to tell you whether you should transplant them or direct sow them. And then if we flip it over, you'll see even more vegetables, and then you'll get into the herbs and even the flowers you should be planting in the month. If you're interested in getting one of these yourself, take a look at the link in the description box below, and it'll take you to my store where you can purchase it. The next category of crops is brassicas. So this is going to be your broccoli, cabbage, Chinese cabbage, kohlrabi, and Brussels sprouts. These crops really thrive in the cooler weather, and they're still going to do okay when our sunlight hours drop. The whole state of Florida can be transplanting these crops right now. Here's a broccoli plant I've got growing in my garden right now. You can see the white flowers. I clearly waited way too long to harvest it, although it was weird this time. It almost like flowered at the same time as creating a head. So there was a very short window to harvest and it would have been a really tiny head. Maybe it has something to do with some of the crazy temperature swings we've had going on. Let's take a look at this craziness right here. I swear when I started these from seed, it said it was kohlrabi. It was a white Vienna kohlrabi, and I have since realized they're not kohlrabi. I think they're broccoli, and I think they're planted like 6 inches apart. It's clearly not going well. It's a little out of control. So I'm gonna probably cut at least one of these out of the garden and give them a little bit more breathing room. This right here is the worst example of plant spacing I've had in the garden this year. Let me know in the comments below if you guys lean towards cramming things in the garden and then taking them out later when you realize you've got a problem like this one. The whole state of Florida can also be planting our root veggies this month. Let's direct sow beets, radishes, turnips, and carrots. Beets you can start from seed in a seed starting cell and then transplant them in, but honestly I think it's harder, it's more work, so why not just direct sow them and maybe put a cover on top if you have issues with squirrels or other critters coming in and eating your seeds. Right here I've got some purple top white globe turnips, and I thinned them, but I thinned them kind of late, and I'm actually kind of curious if they're gonna bulb up or not. They've been in there for about 6 weeks and I don't really see any bulbs yet. So we'll see. Last month I talked about how I failed to germinate my carrots, and wow, I learned so much from all of you guys in the comments about some tricks with germinating carrots. The cornstarch slurry is a really cool idea. I'm going to try that. Our temperatures are supposed to be really cool, like under 75 degrees for the next week. I think it's the perfect time to germinate some carrots. It's very windy today, so I'm trying to hold up the mic in hopes that the audio doesn't get too bad because of the wind. Anyway, right here I've got a bunch of cherry bell radishes, and wow, the input that you guys gave me about how to cook or how to prepare radishes is insane. I got way more responses than I ever thought I would, and I've been recording them all so I can try them all, but I really have a list of like 40 different ways to prepare radishes, so it's gonna take me a minute. In the meantime, I'm just hoping these bulb up. Actually, I think I was wrong. That looks like a purple top white globe turnip. I'm not seeing red radishes, I'm seeing purple turnips. While we're talking about root veggies, let's talk about celery. Yes, I know it's not a root veggie, but I'm struggling to figure out how to categorize celery. It's in the carrot family, so I'm going to talk about it right here. Celery can be transplanted across the whole state of Florida this month. If you haven't started it from seed yet and you want to grow celery, I would probably just buy a start of celery at the store because it takes a long time to start it from seed and get it to transplant size. And it just seems to take off so much faster, especially if you plant it now while you still have some really good sunlight, because once you get into December or January, the pace of growth is going to slow down so dramatically because of the sunlight hours that it's just going to feel like it's taking forever. Now, you guys have been following on the past few videos and following along with my planting guide, and you've been vernalizing your garlic for the past couple months, right? Right? I know I have, and I'm just about ready to plant it. Late November and also December are the prime months for planting your garlic out in the garden in Florida. The way you're going to do it is by breaking up that garlic bulb into the individual cloves and then planting them about 6 inches apart with the sprout pointing up. Garlic will take a long time to mature, and it should be ready somewhere around April or May. North Florida, you can still transplant out your bulbing onion stars. I just transplanted mine out in the garden, and I know it makes for a garden that looks pretty bare because they're so tiny. But don't worry, they'll fill out, and I think I'm going to have a really big onion harvest this year. Central and South Florida, you really probably should have transplanted yours out in October, but if you haven't, go ahead and get them in the garden as soon as possible. Remember to choose a short day onion. I've chosen a Texas 1015 yellow onion variety, and it should start bulbing in about February or March and be ready to harvest April or May. I also planted some of my bulbing onions out front in my Easy Cube self-watering planter, kind of on purpose. I wanted to see how they would do in a self-watering environment. Green onions can also be planted across the whole state this month. These ones are so easy. You can just grab a grocery store bag of green onions, cut off the green tops, and plant the white rooted part. They'll grow back in no time. Central and South Florida, let's direct sow our seed pieces of Irish potatoes this month. Now, I haven't even ordered mine, so it doesn't look like I'm going to get to Irish potatoes this year, but I've successfully grown a Yukon Gold in the past. North Florida, these are a frost-sensitive crop, so I wouldn't recommend planting them until after your frost clears. Central and South Florida, now is a great time to plant some cool weather-loving sugar snap peas. We can direct sow a sugar snap pea, and I highly recommend having a plan for the trellis for these because they're going to get really tall, similar to the height of my pole beans right here. This next section is specifically for everyone in South Florida. You guys have such a unique growing season in these winter months where you can grow all of your brassicas and leafy greens just like the rest of us, but you also can still be putting in the ground some fruiting crops, some warm season crops. I'm here in Central Florida and I'm starting to harvest my tomatoes and all of my peppers that I planted a couple months ago, but all of my planting is cool season right now. South Floridians, you can direct sow pole beans, bush beans, lima beans, corn, and you can transplant in your eggplants, tomatoes, and peppers, and even direct sow all of your squashes still. You'll have to let me know in the comments below how it goes in South Florida when sowing something like a cucumber or a squash in the winter months. I'm curious if the drier season and the lower humidity and the lower pest pressure is going to help you have a lot more success with those crops. Maybe one of these days I'll get to experience some gardening in South Florida. Do you think I can catch it if I throw it? It's a little Everglades tomato. Oh, I caught it! Now let's get into some herbs. We've got annual herbs that don't make it the entire year, and then we've got our perennial herbs that can last many years in a Florida garden. Now across the country, a lot of these annual herbs are limited by the cold northern winters that get really rough frosts. But here in Florida, the reason these herbs are annuals kind of varies based on the individual herb. Some of them do okay in our mild winters and they don't do okay in the summer. But some of them will be killed off in the lightest frost in North Florida. So let's talk about the annual herbs one at a time, starting with basil. Now the funny thing is I walked around my whole garden looking for a basil plant to stand next to as I was doing this section of the video, and I can't find a basil plant anywhere. And now I'm kind of out of the window, although I could get a start and try to risk it. So maybe I'll do that since I'm ashamed that I don't even have a basil plant going. Basil is sensitive to frost, so North Florida I would not plant it this month. Central Florida, you're kind of on the borderline. You could risk it like me, or you can just not plant it and wait until spring. But also be aware that the summer heat is really too much for basil, and it tends to bolt and flower and create these bitter leaves, and it tends to even get fungal issues in the summertime. So plant it as soon as your last frost date is done, and try to get as much harvested and preserved before it gets killed off in the summer. The rest of our annual herbs like cilantro, dill, fennel, and parsley, these are really going to thrive throughout the whole state through our mild winter. All of us can transplant these crops right now. Some of these herbs like cilantro are not going to do well in the summer months at all, so try to plant as much as you can and preserve it so you can still have it when you make some tacos in the summertime. Chives are such an easy crop to grow here in Florida. Mine have been living for several years just in the ground out front of my house. Some perennial herbs like horehound, lemon balm, and mint go really well in tea and can survive year-round in Florida. Right here we've got a nice big healthy patch of lemon balm, and I've got 5 different types of mint. Orange mint, apple mint, chocolate mint, peppermint, spearmint, you name it mint. Now is also a great time for any of us to transplant some of these perennial herbs like sage and oregano and thyme. These are woody herbs that should last year-round in Florida. I want to point out what sage looks like when it's been growing for a long time. When I first planted sage, I didn't realize that it would turn woody like this. I thought that it always looked like this new growth up top. But take a look at that. That is a really woody stem on a sage plant. Something similar happens to oregano. If you look at the newer growth, the stem is a soft, bendy, whitish color. And if you look at the older portion of the plant, you'll see some woody stems like right here. Right here is my rosemary hedge, and you can see it's probably time to come in here and cut it and maybe dry some of it. It's really getting big, and I don't do anything to this plant. Now let's talk about some flowers. I think this is a great time of year for so many of us to get into some annual flowers. South Florida, you can do so many flowers that are in the daisy family. I just started some seeds for calendula for my tea garden the other day, And we can also do Dusty Miller. South Florida, you can do Cosmos. And you guys can still do zinnias. North Florida, it's getting a little bit late for you to plant some of these daisies, but don't worry, we've got some different flowers for you coming up. Central Florida and South Florida, we can both plant begonias in the month of November. And begonias really thrive in like very little sun, so like 4 hours or less of sun. And I'm standing in this spot right here because I want to share with you that I'm going to make a YouTube studio out here. I've got some seats coming and some tables coming so I can decorate it really nicely. And I definitely want to put some begonias out here because it's kind of tucked away and it always gets shade. Begonias, I think, are going to be the best bet for a flower to put in this spot. Central Florida and South Florida, we can transplant borage. Borage is an edible flower and edible leaves. A lot of people actually use this to make tea. And I've noticed that the plant itself needs some support, and that's why you see it staked up with a bamboo stake right here. The bees love this plant, so it's great to put in your vegetable garden to encourage more pollinators to visit your garden. The whole state of Florida can also be planting dianthus this month. Right here we've got a white dianthus with a little bit of a pink center, and then we've got this scarlet red dianthus back here. The whole state of Florida can plant this beauty, and it's called Sweet Alyssum. Another favorite cool season flower is a snapdragon. The whole state of Florida can transplant snapdragons this month. Central and South Florida can transplant Calibrachoa. This one is a Super Bells hybrid. There's also a Million Bells hybrid. This is a nice low-lying flower that's drought tolerant. And I made a mistake mulching too close to the stem at first, so that's why you see that mulch pulled away from the stem, and it should start looking a little bit better here shortly. The whole state of Florida can plant a low-lying petunia. These are such beautiful flowers, and they come in just a million colors. I found so many different varieties when I went to Rockledge Gardens recently, and I ended up going with this really deep purple. Verbena is another flower that the whole state of Florida can transplant this month. Look at those beautiful clusters of purple flowers. I love it. That's it for the crops, the herbs, and the flowers that we should be planting across the whole state of Florida in the month of November. Be sure to visit my website and pick up your planting guide if you don't have one yet, and also it would make an incredible gift for the beginner gardener. See you next time, guys. Thanks for watching.